What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my Draftkings MMA picks for UFC 292. We got Aljamain Sterling going against Sean O'Malley.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out.
And we are back for another DraftKings video. This week we are breaking down UFC 292, which is a very, very good card. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the main event, Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley. Love the co-main event. We got Zhang Weili going against Amanda Lemos, and some other very, very fun fights mixed in as well. This is a card from a DraftKings perspective where I think it's a pretty simple week, I'd say. I think there's just some fights that are very, very easy to target. I think, there's a bunch of fights that are that I definitely want to stay away from as well. So we'll talk about all of that. Before we get into the video, if you guys can please do me a favor, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all the other content throughout the week. You can also check out dfsbythenumbers.com if you do want extra content or if you do want to support me more. There on the DraftKings package, you will find the fighter stats that you see on Friday and Saturday. You will see the targets, the rankings, projections, ownership projections, lineup optimizer, some prize pick stuff as well, and the DFS article also. Ownership projections should be out tonight. I'm just waiting for them to get the salaries in for Brad Katona and Cody Gibson. Once I know those, I'll be able to get the ownership projections out for everybody there. But yeah, other than that, sign up on Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code DFSBTN. I'll be touching on my favorite Underdog play later in the show. And if you guys missed the prize picks breakdown, I did break down some prize picks. And of course, that is same promo code DFSBTN. But with all that out of the way, I say we get into it, guys. And we're going to start with the fight doesn't go to decision lines. And we'll start with Gregory Rodriguez going against Dennis Lewin. And this is a fight that, like I said at the beginning of the show, this is a card where there's just fights you absolutely want to target. And I think all four of these fights are very good, very good fights to target. So I'm going to be playing a lot of these fights. Gregory Rodriguez, Dennis Lewin. So I'm going to more so be on the Rodriguez side here. I think Rodriguez has just a significant advantage in the grappling. I think if, Rodriguez gets this fight down to the mat, he's going to run through Dennis like a hot knife through butter. It's not going to be close. Dennis Lewin, what does he like to do? He likes to go in there. He likes to brawl. And if, Rodriguez brawls with Dennis Lewin, he could get knocked out. We've seen Rodriguez not only knocked out, but, hurt in pretty much every single fight. So, and I guess it all comes down to the game plan of Gregory Rodriguez. If he gets this fight down to the mat and fights smart, I think he pays off this salary and more, at 9,500. So really like Rodriguez. As far as Dennis Lewin, he's a pump play, a dart throw with some knockout upside. And like I said, if Rodriguez does not fight smart, Dennis Lewin becomes a very good play right then and there. So I think it's a great fight to target, but I'm going to be very heavily invested in Gregory Rodriguez there. Next, we have the co-main event. And I, typically, you can make a case potentially for getting away from some of these co-main events and the main events, especially on pay-per-views, because they're just going to have so much ownership. But I really struggle to fade either the main event or co-main event this week because, I like both of them quite a bit. I like them both to finish. I like the winner to put up a very big score. Zhang Weili, super high volume, landing almost 6 significant strikes per minute. Not only that, she's starting to mix in the takedowns, the grappling. She's somebody that I think can go out there and put up one of the biggest scores on the slate with her wrestling upside, control time, high volume, and finish upside as well. But, Amanda Lemos, 7K, like she is going to be very dangerous early on. I think in the first 7.5 minutes, Amanda Lemos is going to have opportunities, which makes her a very intriguing play down there at 7K. I don't see Amanda Lemos winning this by decision, and quite frankly, I don't see her winning this fight if it gets to even the third round. I just don't like the cardio of Amanda Lemos, and if this fight does get extended, it heavily favors Zhang Weili. So I'm more so on the Zhang Weili side myself here, 9,200, but Amanda Lemos is another underdog that I think has a path, which is probably an early knockout, early finish. And yeah, if she lands a big shot, we've seen Zhang Weili finish before in the first round. Next, we have Andre Petrovski going against Gerald Meerschaert. Another great fight to target. Another fight that I think probably does end inside the distance. You have a tale of a minute winner here versus a moment winner. And not to say Petrovski can't win moments as well, but he's going to be winning all the minutes in this matchup just because Meerschaert is not a minute winner at all. Meerschaert's a guy that is losing pretty much the entire fight up until he either lands a big shot or finds a submission more often than not. This guy Meerschaert, though, 35 wins. I think he has like 25, 26 submissions. Gerald Meerschaert is one of those guys who you just can never count out. He's like a Paul Craig, where he's always going to be the underdog, and he's always going to be live in pretty much every single fight, and that's the same case here. Petrovski is going to be the guy landing takedowns. He's going to be the guy on top, but as this fight goes on, Meerschaert is going to have opportunities. So I can see Petrovski going out there, maybe even knocking out Meerschaert in the first round. I can see that. I can see him taking down Meerschaert consistently, subbing him, getting a TKO. I can see that. I can see Petrovski winning a dominant decision. And then on the flip side, I can see Meerschaert catching Petrovski at some point in this fight as well. I think there's a lot of outcomes in this fight. I really do. And all the outcomes I see really score well. So great fight to target. I'm going to have a decent amount of each. I don't have a strong lean one way or another. I really like the price tag of Meerschaert, but I think it will be one of the more popular dogs on the slate for obvious reasons. He's a finisher, and he's super cheap this week. And then we got the main event, Aljamain Sterling going against Sean O'Malley, and I can't even think about maybe fading this main event because I think both guys have paths to score well here, whether that be an Aljamain Sterling early submission. I think an Aljamain Sterling early submission is very, very much on the table. Or, if Sterling's not able to get the grappling going, or if this fight is at range for longer than expected. I mean, Sean O'Malley is more than capable of knocking out Sterling as well. So I think it's either Sterling by submission, O'Malley by knockout. If this does go the distance, I do lean it being Sterling using the wrestling, the control time, and that's going to put up a big score. I just don't see in what world this fight scores poorly. So, yeah, I'm not fading either the main event or the co-main event. I'm not getting contrarian this week in that aspect. I think they're both very important fights, and I think all four of these on here are fights that you're going to want to target. Moving on to the core plays we talked about are all ready, and we're gonna touch on some of these again because this is a slate where there's not a lot of plays really sticking out. I mean, there's like the obvious fights you want to target, and then maybe there's a couple sneaky plays here or there. But this is a slate where it's obvious what fights are going to score well, and it's obvious what fights are not going to score well. And there's a couple of those. So, yeah, Zhang Weili, we talked about her. She's somebody she's 34 years old, and she's going to be the younger fighter in this matchup. I still think she's making improvements. I really do. Every time we see Zhang Weili in there, she's added a new wrinkle to her game. Lately it's been the wrestling, the grappling. She just destroyed Carla Esparza. So I think she has multiple paths here, whether that's knocking out Lemos, taking her down, subbing her, getting this fight extended. I think Zhang Weili has one of the highest ceilings on the slate. Moving on, we got Marina Moroz, 7,900. Speaking about a fight to target, I love this fight. This is the first fight on the card. So it's Karina Silva versus Marina Moroz. Karina Silva is a kill or be killed fighter, and I love targeting those fights. And I think this fight is actually going to be pretty low owned. So Silva, she's 8,300. She's the favorite. Money's pouring in on Marina Moroz. Everybody's on Marina Moroz this week, which is a little bit terrifying. And this money line is crashing down quite a bit. So I think there's going to be some value by fight time in terms of this 7,900 price tag. I wouldn't be shocked if this line becomes a pick'em. It looks like it's surely heading there. But yeah, Marina Moroz is going to be the clear minute winner in this fight. She's going to be the better striker. She's going to be the better wrestler. She's going to be the fighter more likely to end up on top as well. Whereas with Karina Silva, it's pretty much sub one or bust, which sub one or bust. I mean, if she subs Marina Moroz in the first round, she's going to put up a massive score. That's why we'll talk about Karina Silva in a little bit. But as long as this fight gets extended, I think Moroz actually has some sneaky finish upside as well. And I think she has takedown upside. I think she has high volume upside. I think Marina Moroz has a lot of upside on a card where I don't like a ton of dogs. I really don't. Marina Moroz is somebody that does stick out. Gregory Rodriguez, 9,500. We touched on him. I think he dominates with the right game plan. I heard an interview with Rodriguez talking about how he's going back to what got him to the UFC, which is the grappling. I mean, this guy's a high-level black belt. What does Dennis Lewin struggle with? Well, he's been subbed 4 times. I expect Rodriguez to take this fight down to the mat and just style on Dennis. As long as he fights smart, I think he smashes here. Aljamain Sterling, 8,900. Main event, in terms of my ownership, I think I'm going to be slightly more on the side of Aljamain Sterling because he has a lot of upside here. He really does. The takedown upside, the control time upside, the early sub upside. If it goes the distance, like I said, I think he puts a massive score as well. Solid volume as well. But I will have my fair share of Sean O'Malley, and we'll talk about him. I haven't done my lineups yet. Typically by Wednesday, I like to do them. But with the tough finale fights and the Mario Batista getting a late notice replacement, the salary's still not all out. Obviously, can't get my lineups done yet. But in terms of the ownership for the main event, I think I'm gonna have slightly more Sterling for that wrestling grappling upside. But I'll have a decent amount of Sean O'Malley as well. Going to have a lot of the main event nonetheless, I'd say. Moving on to our GPP plays here. Tournament plays, Mario Batista, 9,100. So this is like... yeah, it's a big narrative fight for me. Damon Blackshear, obviously we saw him fight last week. I was all over Damon Blackshear. He was one of my highest exposed fighters on the entire slate. Went out there, dominated, got a first-round twister. And now, it's like the complete opposite. Like, I really like Mario Batista here just due to the fact that this fight's going to be at bantamweight, so Blackshear's going to have to cut all the way down to 135 pounds once again. I want to see weigh-ins. I would be very surprised if Blackshear made weight. And if he is making weight, you got to imagine what toll is that going to take on this guy's body. I mean, this guy just cut weight like a week ago. So, Blackshear is a guy that we have seen slow down in the past. He went life and death with Yusuf Zalal. Yusuf Zalal 10-8'd him in the third round. I think that we could get a Mario Batista, finish as this fight goes on. We'll talk about Blackshear in a little bit. I think Blackshear is going to be very dangerous early, but as this fight goes on, I think Batista is going to have a lot of tools to potentially finish this fight. Karina Silva, 8,300. We talked about her. I mean, you can't ever ignore somebody with a 100% finish rate, especially Karina Silva, who is super dangerous. Wherever the fight goes, on the feet, she throws with bad intentions, but it's her ground game that is just ridiculous. And this is a fight that I do expect to play out on the mat. I really do. So Karina Silva is going to have a ton of opportunities, but the thing I don't like about Karina Silva is she is a minute loser, and if this fight does get extended or go the distance, she is going to probably lose the fight. So, but that's not what you're banking on when you play. You're banking on a first-round finish, and a first-round finish at 8,300 is going to score very well. And I also think she's going to be decently low-owned, just because, like I said, the whole world, including me, is on Marina Moroz. Andre Petrovski, 8,800, wrestling upside, knockout upside, potential submission upside. Like, Gerald Meerschaert's been finished a million times. Like, officially, it's like 12 times Gerald Meerschaert's been finished. I question the chin. On top of that, Petrovski, very good grappler. Meerschaert's been subbed 8 times in his career. I think Petrovski could go out there and get a finish. I do have some serious concerns, though, about this fight if it does get extended. And I have serious concerns about this fight, when it does hit the mat, because Gerald Meerschaert, he's going to be alive at any time. But Petrovski just has a lot of paths here to score well, whether that's a 3-round decision with takedowns and control, whether that's a first-round knockout, or whether that's a finish into the second and third round. I think Petrovski has a lot of upside here. In terms of my ownership, I'm going to play a lot of this fight. It's one of my favorite fights to target, but I do like Meerschaert at that price tag at 7,400. We'll talk more about him. And then a kind of a sneaky one, under the radar one, Brad Tavares, 9,000. This is the first and only time you'll hear me talk about Brad Tavares as a play. I think, every time he's fought, I faded him. This is the least dangerous middleweight in the UFC, but he's taken on Chris Weidman, who I just think is probably done. Chris Weidman, 39 years old at this point, and prior to him, injuring his leg and taking the big layoff, I thought he was already on his way out at that point. Fast forward 2 years later, what is Chris Weidman going to look like? I don't know if this guy can take a shot anymore. I don't like how his cardio has been looking lately. And like I said, it's another 2 years off for Chris Weidman off of a massive injury. I think Brad Tavares has an opportunity to not only win this fight, but finish it down the stretch. Chris Weidman's been finished in all 6 of his losses. So yeah, I think Tavares is going to be super low owned. Nobody's ever going to play Tavares on DraftKings. Moving on to my favorite underdog play of the week. If you guys want to check out Underdog Fantasy, highly recommend it. Use that promo code DFSBTN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. A couple things sticking out on Underdog this week, but my favorite is going to be the Brad Tavares higher on significant strikes. I just think it's low. I mean, this is a very low number for a fight. Like, they're pricing this as if Brad Tavares is going to KO Weidman, which I don't think. Although I think Weidman is probably done, I don't think he's that done to where Brad Tavares is KOing anybody in the first round. Or they're pricing this as if Chris Weidman's going to have success with the wrestling, which I don't think that's the case as well. I think Brad Tavares is going to be stuffing takedowns. I think he's going to be keeping this at range. And I think he has enough. He's low volume, but I think he has enough volume to go out there, get a late second, third round finish, and by then he should be able to hit that 39.5. So give me the higher on Brad Tavares, 39.5 significant strikes. Moving on to the live dogs, Gerald Meerschaert, 7,400. I think he's be very popular this week. I think he's going to be one of the most popular dogs, probably behind guys like Sean O'Malley, and for a very good reason. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert is always a live dog, no matter who he's fighting. He's a guy that you can never count out, has a ton of heart, is super dangerous. This fight is going to hit the mat, and when it does, that's Gerald Meerschaert's world. So, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities here. He is a big underdog, but he's always a big underdog. So I think Gerald Meerschaert at 7,400 makes a lot of sense in terms of a live dog. Sean O'Malley, tons of power. If he's able to stuff some of these takedowns, if he's able to keep this on the feet, he could go out there and very well knock out Aljamain Sterling. I think this main event is borderline must target for me. I think it's either an Aljo sub or an O'Malley knockout. Love this main event. Pedro Munoz, 7,600. Don't know if I love him from a DraftKings perspective, but he is a live dog on a card where I think we're struggling to find these live dogs. He is one of them. Marlon Vera takes off the first round in every single fight. So Pedro Munoz is going to win the first round. That's a fact. It's just he needs to win at least one of the next two to win the decisions. I don't see him finishing Marlon Vera. I don't think that's happening. And like I said, even if Pedro Munoz wins, I think it's going to be a very low scoring win. But if a lot of these other underdogs lose, which I think might be the case, maybe it is enough to find his way on the optimal lineup. So I don't hate some Pedro Munoz. He's somebody that I think at the very least is a live underdog to win the fight this week. And then Damon Blackshear, 7,100. I think Damon Blackshear is a guy that has first-round upside. I really do. I think Damon Blackshear is going to go after it early. I think he probably knows that he only has maybe 5 to 7.5 minutes of cardio, especially with a very, very tough weight cut coming his way. He talked about media day about going out there and potentially getting a first-round knockout, which I like to hear. So yeah, he's going to get after it. Mario Batista has been finished in both his losses, once by knockout, once by sub. So maybe Blackshear's able to go out there and catch him in something. And at 7,100, I think it's worth a shot on some Blackshear at this low price tag. The Batista Blackshear fight's another really good fight that I like to target. Getting into the pump plays, Amanda Lemos, 7,000. Self-explanatory. I mean, if she wins, it's probably a first-round knockout, potentially a second-round knockout. She possesses a lot of power. Zhang Weili's really going to have to mind her P's and Q's early, but I think it's going to have to be early, if at all, for Amanda Lemos. I don't like her cardio down the stretch, but she's somebody that is one of the hardest hitters in the division, and we've seen Zhang Weili knocked out before, so I think Amanda Lemos is a solid pump play this week. Other pump plays that stuck out, Chris Weidman, 7,200. I mean, if he shows up, and I don't think it's the case, but it looks like the Chris Weidman of old, sure, you can go out there and put up a decent score if he's able to wrestle and take down Tavares. I don't see it personally, but if this was a couple years ago, yeah, absolutely. Chris Weidman, 7,200, sign me up. It's just, I don't know. I don't feel great about it. Dennis Lewin, 6,700. We touched on him a tad. Like, if Rodriguez stands and bangs with this guy, Dennis Lewin's going to be live for a knockout there. And then Andrea Lee's another fighter who I kind of like more so from a cash perspective at 6,800. Don't really like her chances to win the fight, but I think she has a decent floor across 15, maybe some takedowns, very high volume. Don't mind Andrea Lee, but more so from a cash game perspective. And then we'll move on to the fade. Ian Gary, 9,600. I actually think Gary wins this fight, obviously. I mean, everybody thinks, Gary's going to win this fight. I actually think he finishes this fight as well. But 9,600 is a lot when we have, fighters like Aljamain Sterling up there, Zhang Weili up there, Mario Batista up there, Gregory Rodriguez up there, Andre Petrovski up there, and they're all cheaper than this guy. Ian Gary's a guy who, I think he wins, I think he finishes, but he has no takedown upside. He's not taking down Neil Magny. He's going to want to stick at range, and if he doesn't knock out Neil Magny in the first round, which I really don't think so, I think it comes second or third. He's not paying off this price tag. Like, he's getting priced as if he's going to go out there and starch Magny in 60 seconds, and I really don't think that's the case. Nobody's starching Magny in 60 seconds. So, I don't mind the fade here in Ian Gary. I'm not going to, I think he's I think he scores well. I think he scores decent, but it's just a huge price tag, so I can't get there personally, but if you want to play him, it's not the worst play in the world. There's just so many better options this week. And then, that's about it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys could do me a favor, leave a like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel. Check out dfsbythenumbers.com. Posted the article today, and the ownership projection should be out hopefully tonight. Still awaiting salaries on Brad Katona and Cody Gibson. Didn't really touch on much of the tough fights, and that's pretty much because I don't have a ton of interest in either of them from a DraftKings perspective. Katona is probably going to be a big favorite. on DraftKings, and then I just don't have any interest in the Hubbard Hollowell fight at all. So I'm gonna be pretty much fading those tough fights for what it's worth. But yeah, guys, leave a like on your way out, subscribe to the channel, go check out the Prize Picks video, and best of luck for UFC 292. See you later.